Hey, thanks for checking out this video about who are we? Who is the Pocket Testament League? Let me start with a story about a man who didn't know God, a man who was somewhat successful in his corporate career, but a man who had no peace. That man was me. When I was 30 years old, I was managing a nuclear power plant. I was on a business trip and I was sitting in a Pittsburgh airport, delayed due to weather. And one of my employees was with me. And he was the same age as I was. He had two young boys the same age as my two young boys. But there were two differences between me and John. One is John had peace. And the other was he had me for his boss, a very demanding manager of a nuclear power plant. And I asked him, I was exasperated. I just was like, John, how do you do this? How do you have peace? And after I kind of explained him what I specifically meant, he took and turned and walked away. He was collecting his thoughts because he needed to come back and tell his church-going boss that I really didn't know who Jesus was. And that night, with John's help, Jesus met me in a Pittsburgh airport. I guess he was delayed for weather as well. That set me on a 17-year journey. I had been in the church for 30 years. But now that I knew who Jesus was, I really began my walk with him. And so I got really involved in men's ministry and was excited about seeing men kind of go through the journey I had gone through, right? That journey of working hard, but being relationally cut off, not trying to mess up my marriage, not trying to mess up my family, but having no relationship with God, no relationship with my spouse, no relationship with my kids, and watching Jesus find those men and their lives be changed. It was exciting. One day I was in the shower and I was thinking about the men's group that night, thinking about the guys who'd be there, where they each were in their walk, maybe some guys, that might make the decision that night to kind of go all in with Jesus, if you will. And that's when it dawned on me. It dawned on me that probably should be thinking about work. You see, God had blessed me. I'd continued to have success in my career. And at that point, I had the privilege of leading the organization that was responsible for the nuclear power plants that were in our nation's submarines. And can I tell you, it's a great organization, great mission focus, great people that I worked with. And man, the men and women of the United States Navy that served on those ships and submarines, they're remarkable. And they needed somebody who in the shower was thinking about them. You see, what the Lord did was he kind of took my passion and moved it from one direction to another, didn't he? And so at age 47, I quit my job and became a pastor. I was a pastor for about 12 years. And through another turn of events, I came to the Pocket Testament League. And can I tell you, when I got there, I was home. You asked who we were. Well, we're people that do all sorts of different things and support and participate in the league in all sorts of different ways. But we have the same three characteristics. We love Jesus. I love Jesus. He rescued me from this life of no peace. We're people who also love the Word of God. The Word of God is what peeled away from my eyes the 30 years of religion that hid Jesus. I love the Word of God. And we're people who have a heart for the lost. As I was working with men, praying that they would come to meet Jesus Christ, the Lord began to even make that wider and wider, so it was men and women and children and all people. When you scratch a Pocket Testament League person, what you find is they love Jesus, they love the Word of God, and they have a heart for the lost. That's who we are in our essence. Now, what we do is we invite people to meet Jesus by reading Jesus' own words. We offer them a Gospel of John and say, hey, the message of this book changed my life. Could I share it with you? Or have you ever read what Jesus actually wrote? Most people say no. Could I share it with you? There's a myriad of ways, thousands of ways that we do it. But what we do is we lead with the Word of God. When I came to the league, we were approaching our 125th anniversary. In 2017, we began praying about what the future would hold. In 2018, the league was 125 years old. We looked backwards and we said, well, how many people have been invited to meet Jesus in the league's 125 years? And we knew we could say with integrity that it had been at least 130 million. I got to tell you, I think it's way more than that. But of course, going through records for 125 years, trying to be able to put your finger on it and say with integrity that 130 million people were in fact invited, we know we can do that. And we wanted to not exaggerate. That's just who we are. So then we began looking forward and kind of looking at the situation and said, well, what could we do maybe in the next 10 years? And, as you know, I've got a business background, and I kind of thought, well, it's an aggressive goal. In fact, it's kind of a crazy goal, but what if we invited 130 million people in 10 years? What if we could invite 130 million people in 10 years, which is what the league did in 125? And then my next thought was, David, that is just pride. That is just your pride. And we kind of stared at that. It's about 8% to 10% year over year growth with no down years, no COVID years, no recessions. But the more we thought about it, we thought, well, why wouldn't we try? And so we kind of laid it before the Lord and said, Lord, just, if this is arrogance, if this is pride, please correct us. But we're going to try to work towards that. And now we're 4 years in, pretty much on that plan of that 8 to 10% growth, really hitting some challenging stretch points right now. But 31 million people have been invited to meet Jesus in 2019 to 2022 with a COVID year stuck in the middle. And we're running at trying to invite more and more people every year as that grows. So that's kind of who we are. If you've gotten to this point on the video, we talk about in detail the different ways we do it in accompanying videos. But can I tell you, God's just widening doors for us. He's helping our members grow in a sustainable way. He's giving us new places to work in crazy places to work across the world through what we call partners. He's provided this digital app to us where in 2023, 4 million people will pull a Gospel of John down from the cloud, if you will, and engage it. And we actually know how many times they read it. It's an exciting ministry. And I'm thinking if you hung in there at this point in the video, maybe God's invited you to kind of think more about us, pray whether or not you want to join us. We're a group of people who love Jesus and love the Word of God and have a heart for the lost. We're super focused on mission. And in another video where we talk about our pathways, you'll see that we really want to be great stewards. Use all the best business principles we can to use our process to get people to meet Jesus Christ. I pray you'll join us.